Yeah, well, Heidi C, she certainly can win the national
Did you know
title.
School Sport Victoria offers 650,000 sporting opportunities in 31 different sports at 10,700 events across the state every single year. That's a lot of kids playing sport. And for over 25 years, the Victorian School Sports Awards have recognised more than 1,500 students, teachers and volunteers for excellence and outstanding contribution to school sport. Now that's a champion effort.
Good afternoon and welcome to the ASKSSV show. We've got the very lovely Linden Hall with us. We love talking to Linden. She's a star athlete and certainly someone who is loved by all. You've got a lot of friends, Linden, that's for sure. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No problem. We love having you on board and certainly love watching you compete as well. But you've got quite the achievements for a young woman. 2016 Olympics in Rio, brilliant effort. 2017 World Championships in London. 2018 Com Games at the Gold Coast. And 2019 World Championships in Doha. But to top it all off, women's 1500 national record holder with a time of 4:00.86 set in Oregon. Out of all those achievements, which I know it's you're a very humble young lady, that's for sure, so you don't like having these achievements read back to you, but out of all these achievements, which one is the sweetest in your mind? Which one is your favourite, if you had one?
Probably running at the Olympics. It was my first Australian team, so it was a pretty good one to lead off with, I guess. And I think just for so many other junior athletes, it was, always the dream, especially, being in primary school around the Sydney Olympics and things like that. It was something I just always wanted to do. So that was just a huge milestone to reach and probably hard to beat.
Well, I bet that would have been fantastic. And I guess Com Games at home on the Gold Coast, that would have been quite special to have such a huge following in terms of Australians. Would that be right?
Oh, it was absolutely amazing. I think it made Com Games so much probably bigger than it probably would have been for me if it was, in a different country. Just being able to have so many family and friends, training partners, all those really important people that helped me get to that starting line at those championships who, typically can't always be there at an Olympic Games when it's in Brazil or something that's, far away and obviously quite expensive. So to be able to have all of those people there to share those moments in is really special. And I feel like, they get a little something out of everything they put in to help me. And I think the top end sort of 200 to go at the Com Games was sort of the makeshift stands they put in. And I think we were calling them the cheap seats, but they were like the rowdiest bunch of Australians. And it was exactly what you needed, with 200 to go in your race. It was perfect. Every time you sort of got round to that bend, you knew you were going to get a really big boost.
Very good. Now, just to put in perspective, for those of you who are not familiar with what a 1500 looks like, we've got a very shortened version, a 2-minute version of the 7-minute video, just 2 minutes and 40 seconds, just to put into context the whole concept and watch you do your thing. So we're going to watch that very quickly and then come back to you, Linden.
Yeah, well, Heidi C, she certainly can win a national title. And as they are off and racing, wearing hip number 1, Georgia Hansen. 2, Heidi C. 3, Bernadette Williams. 4, Abigail Reagan. In 5, Zoe Buckman. 6, Katrina Robinson. 7, Linden Hall. 8, Natalie Rule. 9, Jenny Blundell. 10, Chloe Tai. 11, Lauren Reed. And 12, Sarah Eckel.
Okay, it's been a really rough start and the pace is probably not what Linden wanted to have happen at the start. She got checked at the start and now she's at the back, which goes against what I just said, Lynchy. But then she's tried to get through because she knows that she doesn't want to be stuck on the inside. But Heidi C held her position, which she's entitled to do, and now Linden's coming around wide because she knows she's got to be up that front and try and make it fast. Can't rule Chloe out because Chloe's been in England and she's come back home and she's been racing really well.
Heidi C just leading that catch-up pack, but a good 6 metres to go between those 5 out in front. Linden Hall is going to lead them through with 400 metres left.
Well, Heidi C looks gone. she's been injured. She's coming back. She's moved back to Australia. So it looks like it's a race out here in front. Jenny Blundell, Zoe Buckman and Linden Hall is leading them down the back straight.
Yeah, so that is your 5 there. Reagan and Ty just off the back with Blundell, but now they're really starting to turn it up. It's Linden Hall and Zoe Buckman, and they've kicked out with 250 metres to go. The long striding Blundell trying to catch them back, but with 200 metres left in this women's 1500 metre final, it is Hall and Buckman. And coming around past the water jump for the last time. Hall on the inside rail, Buckman on her outside. They are the 3rd and 4th fastest all-time in Australian history. And as they get to the home straight, long striding, out in front, Linden Hall finding another gear with 50 metres left in the race. She's going to try and reach this finish line. It's going to be a very, very quick time as well. It's going to be under the A standard, 4:07.56. And I think that would have been an A standard as well. Fast running there from Chloe Ty, making her way up for the bronze, but Linden Hall with an A qualifier should be an automatic nomination.
And you could see by the celebration on her face how happy she is with that. It's redemption for her after last year's disappointment. It is really nice when you see an athlete who's a star of the sport go through those hard times and then come out the other side. And she deserves to enjoy this victory. And that was fantastic. Both of these ladies, for this time of year, Zoe hasn't really raced much because she's been up at Falls training. And Linden's done a 5K, I think an A standard as well.
Very good 5K.
So we know that she's very fit at the moment, but you just haven't seen many head-to-heads with these ladies, and they didn't disappoint. It was a close race and a fantastic time to finish with.
First Open National title for Linden Hall there. Linden Hall taking the win. Zoe Buckman second place. Chloe Ty in.
What a fantastic race that was. And tell me, what goes through your mind when you're determined to get a qualifier, which we'll talk about in a second, the A standard, B standard qualifier, but you're determined to get a qualifier, you start the race and you've been pushed to the back.
Well, I think I guess for that race, I already had a handful of qualifiers. So my main aim was I had to come first or second to automatically make the team for Commonwealth Games. But obviously I had not yet to win a national championship at that point, despite having had the fastest time. So I felt like there was a lot of expectation more just to win for that reason than anything else that year. But I think the biggest thing with the 1500 is that first lap is always a bit messy, choppy, everyone's a bit nervous. You kind of have to just let it happen and then, not try and waste too much energy if you do sort of get caught at the back, because you've got plenty of time through those mid stages. And I just like to make sure I'm in a good spot where I can be ready to go, when there's 600 meters to go or something, when the moves start coming. And often there's, a few people have dropped off by then, so there's less bodies to navigate around.
It would have been. But, I mean, it's obviously 1500 is a very tactical race. Is that right? You've got a lot of tactics that you go in with, and we don't want you to share those tactics because we don't want to give away your game plan, but it is a very tactical race in a sense.
Yeah, and, every time you line up, it can go a different way, and, you can do your best to do your homework and guess how the girls you're racing like to go about their racing, whether they like to, take it out hard, sit back. You kind of get to know some of the girls, but at the same time, everyone races a bit different depending on what's at stake and what they're trying to achieve, what the weather's like even. So you sort of got to be ready for anything almost, and sort of be ready to adjust your plan if things don't go exactly how you imagined they might. And just kind of, you've got to be on your toes the whole time to make sure you're ready to go.
Very good. 4 minutes, phenomenal time. Where did it all start for you? Where did your love of running start?
Probably in grade 6 when I made a Victorian cross country team. So it was the first year I'd made state cross country. I'd made states for swimming and athletics before, and I was really keen to make cross country in states because I wanted the 3rd matching t-shirt that you got from the meet. So I got that, and then heard you got to go to Queensland if you made the Victorian team, which sounded pretty good in June in winter in Victoria. So that was a bit of an incentive possibly, and managed to come second at state championships, and that was when I made my first Victorian team. And then probably really threw myself in the deep end. All of the other girls on the team, I guess, had been doing athletics and kind of knew what they were doing. I'd probably been more of a swimmer and maybe a netballer around that time, played a lot of sports, but I hadn't probably taken running very seriously. I was lucky to have a teacher at my school who was a former top level runner. So he helped me out with a little training program in the lead up to my first nationals, which was really cool. And then after I came back from those nationals, I think I came 11th, and we won the relay. So it was pretty successful first nationals, I think, but I came home and was like, oh, 11th, okay, I want to do better than that. So what do I need to do? So then I joined an athletics club and found a coach, and kind of just went from there, sort of, running sort of nationals, cross country and track each year. Sort of from there, I guess.
So you made the teams you're referring to, the Team Vic track and field and Team Vic cross country teams. You made quite a number in your time. Would that be right?
Yeah, I managed to be on a Vic team for cross country from year 6 all the way through to year 12. And that was probably like the highlight of my running calendar, was those trips away, because we had a really great age group. We had sort of the same 5 or 6 girls almost every single year. And some of those girls are still my best friends today. I speak to them a lot all the time, and hang out when we're not in lockdown and whatnot. So it's really cool that I was able to make those friends all those years ago through school sport and things. Definitely. We used to live down out to Melbourne, and to get down to Melbourne, the airport. And literally every time we would come past the airport, I'd tell Mum how many weeks it was until we'd come to the airport to fly to whatever state nationals was in that year. Just because, it was one of my favourite parts of the year.
Amazing. That's so that's grade 6 to grade 12, plus you would have probably made Team Vic track and field and Team Vic cross country in the same year in some of those years as well. So that's a phenomenal amount of Team Vic teams.
Yeah, I've got a solid bag full of Team Vic job, and I think every couple of years, Mum's like, "Oh, do you still need all of this?" So I was like, "Yes, I'll throw it out."
Of course you do, and you've probably got a bunch of medals as well. Now we've got some fans of yours that are going to be joining the show. We've got 3 that are joining us today, 3 females actually, who are going to be joining us a little later on. But we've got Catherine, who we're going to start off with. Catherine loves this show, and she's from Middle Park Primary School. She's going to jump on and ask the question, and hopefully you'll be able to hear her clearly. Catherine, how are you?
Good.
That's good.
Yeah.
Now you can hear okay, Linden?
Yep.
Excellent, Catherine. What's your question for Linden Hall?
What food do you eat before you train and compete?
Food before training, great question, because I studied nutrition and dietetics at uni, so perfect question to ask. Before my race, I always have a banana about 1 hour before I do my warm-up. It's about long enough to let it digest, especially when you're nervous before a race. And then usually about 2 hours before that, which is usually lunch or something, I often have something like some rice with like chicken or tuna or something like that. Or a sandwich with very few ingredients. I try to keep it pretty plain, but lots of carbohydrates, so things like breads and rice, because that's what's going to give us our fuel to run fast.
Very good. Now, Catherine, as a dietitian, Linden knows what she's talking about regarding food, and every time we've asked that question, what's the answer everyone's been giving?
Every single person has said banana and something else. And even I say banana, because I'm a runner and I run 1500s, and my dad always says, "Eat your banana, eat it all."
Yeah, it's good because it's, especially when you're running in lots of different countries and different cities, for me, there's always going to be bananas. They're pretty easy to find. You decide, oh, I love this brand of muesli bar before my race, but they only sell it in Australia. You're going to have to travel with a lot of muesli bars to make sure you can get it, because we don't want to ever try anything new before a race, because we'll probably see it again.
That's a great point you just raised, because I haven't travelled that much, but I've been in Indonesia, Thailand, America, and the food in Indonesia and Thailand isn't always and also Vanuatu, isn't the best food for just getting around your day-to-day. It's especially not great for an athlete at your level. So you've raised an interesting point that you want to find something that is unique to every country in a sense.
Yeah, so it's good to always have sort of backup plans as well. You know that if you can't find a ripe banana, they always go very quickly at the hotel breakfast before a race. I like to strategize and usually pick mine up the day before, because I know race morning, everyone's going to be at breakfast and like, oh, I need a banana for my race. I'm going to take that from breakfast. So I always got to plan ahead for those ones. If not, it's usually not too hard to find a supermarket. And yeah, makes life easy.
I think Catherine's got another question, but here's a little fun fact. I'm not able to digest bananas in Australia. They don't agree with me, but in Vanuatu, I can down them as much as I want and they don't have any effect. So interesting that bananas do have different compositions, I guess, and different probably pesticides in other countries. Catherine, what's your next question?
What physical and mental struggles have you fought to run? I know that you hurt your foot, but was there anything else?
Was that about injuries? So early last year, I had a pretty bad run of injuries actually, which was probably a little bit of bad luck in a few ways. So yeah, it was definitely quite challenging. So I tore my calf in 3 places, and then when I was rehabbing from that, I then tore my quad, probably because I'm not very good at riding a bike. I should probably stay away from it. I got a bit carried away, I think. And then when I was coming back from that, I then hurt my knee a little bit. So it was sort of a bit of a dominoes of one thing into the other. But last year, because the World Championships were really late, which meant I had a little bit of time on my side in terms of being able to recover and rebuild and get some races under my belt. If they had have been when they normally were, I think I would have been in a lot of trouble. But I think, yeah, when you're having those challenges, you're not able to maybe do the activities you really like to do quite as much. I found the best way was to kind of find some new goals. And so I got pretty into my gym work and my strength training. So it was kind of just, being like, can I improve on these things that sometimes I can't try as, do as hard as the same level when I'm trying to run, because if I do gym too hard, I'm just going to be really sore and tired when I try to run, and that's not helpful because the running is more important. But because I wasn't running, it was kind of like a new challenge. And I guess because I'm not as good at it, it was easier to improve. So I think that's probably the best thing that I had during that time, was kind of trying to, find new challenges that I guess being injured had kind of forced me to discover, which is not super fun, but a good way to keep you on track and, a little bit of motivation.
Yeah. Do you have any things to say to...
What was that, sorry?
Do you have any quotes or anything to say for runners to make them faster, or,
Do you have any favourite quotes that sort of motivate you in terms of, getting on with the job?
My favourite quote, which is actually just something that my mum used to always say to me before a race, or now she has to text it to me because usually but it's actually from Toy Story, so just run like the wind bullseye, which nice. Because it's just simple, it's to the point, just run as fast as you can. Complicate running, and it's not that complicated. It's running around in circles, and I like it, because it's something Mum's always said to me, but I also like it because it's just really simple.
Very good. We've got to keep moving with the show. Catherine, thanks heaps for joining us. You're always great to have on the show, and we love your long sleeve state championships shirt there, or SSV shirt you've got on there. Well done, and we'll see you at some other time.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, lovely.
So lovely to have people that are big fans of yours, and I love that quote: "Run like the wind bulls." I love that Mum is still supportive of you and still backs you 100%, which is really good. We've got some other people that are going to be joining the show in a second, but before we get them on, what advice would you give to your 12-year-old self? You're you look back at knowing what you know now, what would you say to 12-year-old Linden if you had the opportunity, knowing what you know now?
I think it's probably about just having patience and not having to achieve everything in high school. I guess it's sort of, there's lots of incentives in making junior teams and things like that. And at the time, it can seem like the end of the world when you don't make it. But I think it's, probably looking back on it, there's probably a lot of athletes who did make teams like that who go on to make senior teams. So it probably works out well, but I think at the time, I just missed out on a few junior teams and very upset about it. And probably wasn't the end of the world. It's all worked out okay now. So I think that's probably the main message.
Yeah, I bet. Now, I mean, obviously you would have a level of love for the sport, because you wouldn't compete at the level you did unless you did have a love for the sport. And I'm certainly not saying, and I wouldn't be foolish enough to think that you love every day of the sport, but there's got to be an underpinning and underlying love. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's just I've been doing it for so long as well now that it's such a, part of my day-to-day life. So, even when I have an end of season break, I feel a bit lost. It's like, well, no, this rest is still kind of part of training, but, it's sort of just, it's weird to not plan my day around when I'm going to go for a run. I think it's just that constant challenge. It's such a measurable sport that, what can I do to be fun next time I get to race? And that constant, I guess you're, in a way, as much as you are racing other people, you can, really just compete against yourself as well and just try and be better than you were last season.
That's right. That's exactly right. We've got some other guests that are going to be joining the show. We've got Ruby, who's going to be joining us now, and Ruby is a big fan of yours also, and she's a Team Vic alumni student, made Team Vic. You can see she's wearing her Team Vic jacket now. Ruby, what's your favourite sport in particular?
Hockey.
Hockey. Excellent. Very good. So, what's your question for Linden?
You studied in the US. How did that help you progress as an elite athlete?
Great question.
Really. I think going to the US was really good for me because I think when you come out of high school, and you have to go into open age competition, it's really hard. And, you're competing against adults and you're sort of, only really sort of 18, 19. And sometimes it's sort of a bit being thrown in the deep end. So competing in the US was really good because you were only competing against people who were sort of 18 to 22. So it was a good kind of intermediate competition to sort of set you up to be able to be ready to compete against, the top open women, which was really good. And then in Australia, I guess we don't have huge numbers of runners. So you're always racing the same girls at most of the meets. So it gets a bit predictable. You're like, oh, so-and-so is going to take it out hard, but they'll probably die. This person is going to sit at the back and then sprint at the end. And it's kind of a bit boring and predictable. Whereas in the US, you got to race different people and really top quality fields because obviously there's a much bigger population and then there's heaps of international students like myself. So it was really good to learn about different ways about racing and things like that. We talked before about like the tactics in the 1500s. So I think I was able to learn lots about running tactical races that I probably wouldn't have had the opportunity to in Australia. As well, of course, of just being financially well looked after, and they have amazing facilities at all the universities, and really well funded their sports programs. So you get really well looked after. So you sort of don't realize how spoiled you are until you come home and you're like, oh, I don't get that for free anymore. What? So it was an incredible experience, and I definitely would go again if I was finishing high school again. Unfortunately, I'm not, but it was an amazing 4 years.
Great question, Ruby. You got another question?
Yeah. How have you stayed motivated during the postponement of the Olympics?
Great question.
Up and down, that's for sure. I think initially we were all really stressed about if the Olympics was going to happen or not. So then when they did postpone them, I think it was kind of a relief because you knew what was happening. And then after that, it was sort of a bit sad because I guess it's sort of structured the last few years so much around being ready to go to the Olympics, which were meant to start today. And then it was sort of just gone. You were sort of like, oh, what do I do now? It was very, I guess you kind of just lost that direction for training and everything like that. So yeah, that's where again it's been fun to kind of try and find some new challenges. If there's sort of time trials or things like that while we don't have races, just to have some goals in training has sort of been important. The Olympic Council has been really good with sort of providing ways for the athletes to connect and be involved in webinars and things with former athletes. So there's been lots of ways we've been able to connect with sort of different teammates and things like that, which has been really good as well.
Very good. Hey, where do you want to take your hockey one day, Ruby? Where do you hope to be?
The Olympics.
Good job. And it's great that it's Olympic sport.
Yeah.
Seems the Hockeyroos and the Olyroos are certainly set for Tokyo, that's for sure. They're looking in fantastic form, those two teams, the men and the women.
Yeah.
Good job. Hey, thanks for joining us on the show. We're going to keep moving now, and we hope to see you in future shows.
Thank you.
No worries. See ya. It's always good to have someone join and just listen to what they have to say. And she had some fantastic internet there, so there was no delay there. But in regard to Tokyo, you touched on a little bit. Being postponed for a year, would that have played into your hands given that the season for 2019 or the recent seasons haven't been fantastic for you in terms of injury?
No, I was going pretty well, sort of back on track. I think last year, when it sort of first happened, I was like, oh, I kind of wish this was last year when I was injured. But on reflection, I think if I was injured and not able to run during this period, that would have been worse because I would have had way too much time on my hands. So it's good to be able to have, that time to be able to get out of the house for an hour and things like that rather than, being stuck at home too much, I think. So, I mean, it's a bonus to get fitter and stronger, but I probably would prefer it to have gone ahead as planned.
Now, what are you doing to keep yourself occupied and fit during this time of isolation?
Well, luckily with running, it's pretty straightforward, so that's been relatively uninterrupted. We had a bit of trouble getting on some tracks and things, but being a distance runner, we're able to run, anywhere we can sort of make it work, especially when we're not really preparing for races. It's not quite as important to be on the track. And then we're really lucky at the Victorian Institute of Sport that we've been able to remain open during this lockdown. So we've still had access to our gym and everything, just with obviously a lot of protocols in place around cleaning, and we're only allowed in small groups, and it's you get allocated a time slot, temperature checks and things like that. So it's pretty involved process to be able to use that, but it's really nice that we've got those facilities. Sort of being able to give training that normal routine that sort of gives day-to-day life a bit of structure, I guess. But that's been good in that sense of it's been somewhat normal. And then sort of just finding a few new activities because we are sort of at home a bit more. Probably been doing a bit more cooking and baking than I normally would. I've been doing a bit of knitting. So lots of exciting things.
And you moved just before COVID, so this is a new place for you and trying to make it home as well, I'm sure. In regard to your season in particular, what is it that you are working toward now for the next 12 months? Because is it about 12 months till Tokyo? Almost
12 months yesterday.
12 months yesterday. I thought it was to the week. So 12 months till Tokyo. What is the next 12 months going to look like for you? Maybe take us through a typical training week for Linden Hall.
So the next 12 months is very unknown. I think hopefully we can have an Australian season.
Yes.
That we can get racing, because I don't think we're going overseas to do any racing anytime soon. So yeah, we sort of almost reset to this time last year and what we were planning on doing from then, and I guess we've got a bit more time to fine tune what that plan looks like. But normal week to week is not that exciting. On a Monday, Wednesday and Friday, we just do easy run and gym. And then on a Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday, we do different sessions. So we're usually on the track on Thursday, and Tuesday and Saturday are normally more like threshold sessions. So somewhere like Albert Park or Princess Park are those sort of locations. And then on Sunday, we do a long run.
That sounds like a very, very flat out week, that's for sure. And like you said before, it's interesting, taking parts or taking that away from you would leave quite a big gap, because it's such an intricate part and certainly interwoven into every part of your week in particular.
Yeah, definitely. We didn't have the gym during the first lockdown, and it meant you were doing sort of in the house more. So having the gym open this time around is a good reason, a bit different, just to get out of the house for a bit and a bit of normal routine.
Yeah, that's right. And it's good that the VIS has been able to engage with the powers that be to make sure that, the gym can be open. But as you've seen with the numbers, 404 yesterday, 484 this week, it's huge numbers that we're seeing. But good that you're able to go out running, and the tan's not far from you, I guess. So you get to run on the tan, but it's nothing like a competition, I'm sure. I'm sure you're missing the competition part.
Yeah, definitely. I think, you keep getting sort of all those reminders on social media of, oh, this time last year, this is where you were. I'm like, oh, it's jealous. And I think, some of the athletes in Europe and America have been able to race. So, yeah, it's hard not to get jealous of what they're doing. They've also got summer, which has been unfair. So, yeah, it is not quite as exciting, but, trying to find some ways to kind of replicate racing as much as we can in training. So with some time trials and things like that, just to try and get those racing juices going as much as we can.
Exactly. Now, we've got a question coming in from Asha Morrow. She was going to join us. She hasn't joined us this afternoon, but that's okay. She's from Langwarrin Park Primary School. And this is what she says. Hi, I'm 10 years old and I do little athletics. And when I'm older, I want to be an Olympian in the 800 and the 1500 and the walk. And just wondering, how much training would you do each week? So in terms of hours, if you had to quantify it in terms of hours, how many hours of training would you do?
I think I'm usually spending about 9 hours of actual running time. I think that's what my watch tells me at the end of the week. Plus a couple of probably 4 to 5 hours of gym work. And then sort of all of your kind of recovery and physio and things like that. But I guess definitely a volume I've built up to over the years. Not something I was doing when I was in school or anything like that. So I think especially, with that sort of volume that you need for, to run distance and stuff, it's not something you can jump right into. That's when you're going to get injured. So it needs to be a really steady progression, and sort of, I guess everyone's a little bit different in terms of what works for them. I think I'm probably a lower mileage sort of distance runner. So that's sort of just what I've found works for me. If I do a bit too much, that's when I've gotten injured before. So, I guess it's almost a little bit of trial and error, with some guidance from coaches and things like that, to find that spot that does work best for you and, you can stay healthy.
Yeah, very good. Now, 9 hours of running a week, that's a huge amount of running.
Well, some of that's going to be like recovery, but that's the total elapsed time on my watch.
That's amazing. That's considerable, because some people wouldn't even drive 9 hours a week to get to work. But look, that's quite phenomenal. Which part of the training is your favourite part of training?
My favourite is usually Thursdays. That's sort of our harder track session, and we're in the guts of track season. That's sort of the session that's the most like racing, and those are the sessions that kind of tell you the most about what kind of racing shape you're in. So it can be really, I guess, exciting when you run a session really well, maybe faster than you did previously. It tells you a lot, like, I'm ready to run fast, and that's really exciting. And it's also fun being at the track when you've got sort of all your other event groups around. You sort of got some of the long jumpers, some of the sprinters, and just kind of, seeing what some of the others are up to is kind of nice, just from that social aspect, and, see how their training's going and things like that.
Yeah, I bet that's an interesting time for you. You've got quite a great training group. You must love training with the group as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think having a good group, to make training fun is really important. Otherwise, it's, if it becomes too much of a chore, you're not really going to want to go, and you're probably not going to train as well. Whereas, when you show up and you warm up with your friends, it's so much more relaxed, and, you're ready to go either way, but you don't spend your whole warm-up jog stressing about the warm-up. You spend your warm-up jog talking about, what movies people have watched and things like that. It's a lot more fun.
Well, I mean, you'll need your downtime, and you're a very social person, and obviously have a lot of friends, and they just love having you around, I'm sure. But what does Linden do for relaxation? Like, what's your go-to in terms of just turning off and not training, but just doing something that you really enjoy?
Probably depends on the day of the week. But yeah, probably reading, or, just watching Netflix, putting the legs up, not using legs. Or yeah, I like cooking and things like that when I've got time to, and whatnot. Obviously got on the jigsaw puzzle bandwagon. So that's been entertaining, because I think it's easy to kill a few hours doing that, because I'm like almost get competitive about it. So yeah, nothing super exciting, I don't think. Yeah, I mean, back when we had coffee shops, definitely spent a lot of time frequenting cafes, but lost that activity for a little while now, but we'll appreciate it all the more when it comes back.
It's just so weird, like watching, I don't know if you watch the football. I don't watch a great deal of football. I'm a massive soccer fan. But watching the football last week and seeing 30,000 at Optus Stadium, it looked like a completely different world to where we're at. Now, look, just in regard to this question, how would you answer this question? What sacrifices have you had to make in life in general to be where you are?
I guess it's sort of just a few challenges of spending a lot of time away, and yeah, often kind of, yeah, not sort of being in Australia for sort of 3 months of the year, which is lovely in terms of usually avoiding the cold weather, but yeah, obviously has its challenges, and yeah, trying to sort of balance sort of almost two worlds of, being at home versus sort of living out of a suitcase somewhere across Europe. But yeah, that's probably the biggest thing I would say.
Yes, I bet it has. Now, you've studied, which is quite phenomenal in regard to finishing everything, and you did a lot of that study overseas, is that correct?
So 4 years overseas and 3 years total in Australia.
Now, having that as a backing is fantastic, but how has sport set you up in life, for life in general?
Yeah, really helpful, I guess, sort of being in a sort of sports dietetic space. I've been able to meet some really great people in that sort of sports nutrition space through, being on teams, and, the dietitian has been working with those teams through the VIS and things like that, which is really cool to be able to just sort of, hear about their experiences and bounce questions and ideas off them. Yeah, probably people that you wouldn't necessarily cross paths with as a, relatively recent grad in normal scenario, which is pretty lucky.
Very good. Now we've got, I guess, in general, what's next for Linden Hall? Like, what are you focusing on?
Well, I guess we're sort of, reset to the new Olympics in a year, hopefully. So ideally, at the Rio Olympics, I was the first person to miss out on the final. So I'd really like to be the other side of that and, be the first one not to miss the final. So that's, really, really big goal is to make that final. But of course, it's always to try and run faster and run a PB.
Fantastic. Now, I guess if anyone wants to get in contact with you, we've got your Instagram account in the show notes. So is that the best way for people to contact you if they have questions?
Yep, that's probably easiest.
Brilliant. All right. Thanks heaps for joining us today. We've got next week, we've got AFLW player Libby Birch, who's an SSV ambassador, and she'll have a different perspective entirely. But it's always good, we had Catherine on today, and then we had Ruby on as well. And it's nice to have students jump on board and ask questions that are not from particularly in running in particular, because obviously any elite athlete can teach any emerging athlete those kinds of questions. Thanks heaps for joining us, Linden. You've been a great interview as per usual. We look forward to championing you in the future, and we really do think this next year is going to be fantastic for you. And we look forward to seeing your name up in lights, at least on the scoreboard at the Tokyo 2021 Olympics in less than 12 months' time. So good luck for the future. We do hope you get a really good season in this season, whatever that looks like. But we wish you all the best.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
No problemo. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you at some point, I'm sure.
Sounds good.